G'day, g'day. I have been researching something called observability, and I wondered how that's going to actually fit into the CX world. Now, through my research, I met this guy, John. G'day, John.
G'day, Luke.
He's from a company called Operata. And what I noticed, first of all, was that you've cornered this phrase called CX observability.
You bet. Have indeed.
Now, I'm going to give you a minute to pitch what is Operata, and then let's just get right into observability and how that actually impacts customer experience, employee experience, IT, all the where that fits into the world. How does that
Sure,
fit?
let's do it.
Okay, John. So what is CX observability?
Yeah, so I think we're all familiar with the role of observability in IT operations. Today, you couldn't really imagine running a cloud infrastructure platform without some level of observability on top. Tools like Datadog and Splunk and New Relic and those sort of things. But what we found out in the market is that there isn't the same approach taken to a customer interaction. Seemed a little bit weird to us. So if we understand a lot about our systems and platforms and how they operate, but we don't apply that same level of granularity and control and visibility across things that really matter, like a human interaction or a people interaction. And so CX observability is to try to close that gap. So what goes into making the best CX interaction between both the agent and the customer? And so that's what CX observability is all about, shining a light into what goes into making those amazing connections.
Yeah, wow. I think that's really interesting, particularly from like a CX perspective. We all are wanting to get observability. For a long time, we've all had customer journey maps and the likes, but a lot of that is very hard to then turn into something that can be very practical.
Right.
So that's interesting. All right. So I'm going to give you an elevator pitch. What is Operata?
Sure. So Operata is a CX observability platform. Its role is to measure an interaction from the time it enters into a CX platform. We'll call it a CCaaS platform. And for those of you who aren't aware of what a CCaaS platform is, that is a contact center as a service. So the likes of NICE and Genesys, Amazon, many vendors run contact centers as a service. Traditionally, contact centers used to be on-prem, and the IT teams and the business teams had full control over this. Now, as it's shifted to the cloud, it's a big black box. And so the idea of CX observability and Operata's role in this is to shine a light on those interactions from the time they enter the platform all the way through to the agent and provide real-time insights on how to improve those interactions.
Okay, so how does Operata actually differentiate from, say, a normal monitoring tool or contact center tool?
No, good question. So I guess traditionally monitoring tools are fairly binary, and it's usually post the event where you'd use those tools to pull up and see what happened, what went wrong. Did a telecommunications trunk fail? Did a server go down? Something like that. Occasionally they have alerting, but it doesn't really help the interaction in the moment, does it?
No.
I think that's really the difference about observability, being able to determine real-time insights during that conversation and guiding agents on how to make changes to improve that performance. That's the difference between monitoring, which is quite passive, and observability, which is quite active.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so what you're talking about there, to me, says that it goes beyond just being like an IT monitoring tool.
Right.
It definitely has that by the sounds of things, and load testing and all that sort of stuff. But
Sure.
at the same time, it's also helping an agent. When I think about observability, the first thing that kind of came across my mind is, oh God, are we just going to be going down this whole path of even more metrics? And we're already measuring contact centers. We could probably measure everyone's breath, right?
Right.
Are we just going on a witch hunt with this observability? But it doesn't sound like that to me.
No, not at all. It's an interesting journey that we took as the product has evolved. We did start off more on the IT ops side of things. So it really was technical metrics, traces, and logs, the three pillars that make up observability. But then we quickly discovered, well, not every issue is a technical issue, and sometimes that there are improvements and gains to be made on the human side of things. And also, let's not forget about the poor agent here.
Yeah.
The agents are often left out of the loop. And so we were thinking at the time, well, if the issue may not be technical, it may be something related to behavior or performance, we can maybe give that agent a gentle nudge to help them improve on the spot. Now, we're not talking necessarily about real-time coaching, but we're talking about our observations of perhaps their headset, their boom microphone might be in the wrong position, the customer might, and so we'll remind them to put their boom mic down. Things of that nature that we can make a positive impact on the fly.
Cool.
Yeah, it is.
And it's good for the customer too, right? They then can hear the person. You can imagine there'd be a lot of, particularly with work from home, right?
Yeah.
That'd be a big use case for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So work from home, especially if network connections aren't necessarily up to the enterprise standard, you're working off a home NBN or remote coaxial connection or fiber optic connection. Sometimes the kids might come home from school, start streaming, start gaming, and then the interactions will start to deteriorate at that point. So we can again nudge the agent and say, "Hey, looks like the same things happened yesterday. 3:30's come along, and there's been a network interruption. Try these things to resolve."
Wow.
And then if they can't resolve those, at least we've got some context around the interaction, who that impacted, how that interaction was impacted, and then we can notify the I team and ops team with all that contextual data to help them solve the problem, that get to the root cause.
Really nice. Okay. So thinking about some other use cases, now I'm thinking back to when I first did an Amazon Connect implementation. One of the early implementations here in Australia.
Yep.
We were doing it pretty blind and we weren't sure what we were going to get. So how does something like Operata and CX Observability help contact centers who are going through that initial startup and setup phase?
Let's face it, when you're delivering any kind of technology, and it doesn't matter if that's at home or that's in the enterprise or it's in a small, medium business, nothing's perfect. There is always going to be something that crops up along the line that'll interfere with your best laid plans. I think where Operata is perfect in the early phase of an implementation such as Amazon Connect is helping organizations understand where those issues might be. Is it with the vendor? Is this something that Amazon can help lean in and help support you through that resolution? Is it an issue with their technology? Or is there an issue on your side that you perhaps have been blind to in the past because you didn't have the correct tools, but all of a sudden you can see, actually, it is my network connection or my firewall, or my IDS, or perhaps my headset's the wrong spec, or perhaps my machines are the wrong spec. Having all of that measured up front will give you a real head start as to where you need to head off some of these problems and who needs to take responsibility for resolving them. Let's face it, there's a lot that makes up a contact center. You've got the desktop teams, you've got the network teams, you've got the cloud teams. You've got what is a black box out there in the cloud that is this contact center that you used to have the full control over. And then you've got your vendor, you've got everyone else in between. You've got your headset vendors, your network guys, all of that stuff. And so understanding where to direct those people's attention so you can all come together to deliver amazing customer experiences. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
The earlier you get that, the better.
You touched on something really interesting. One of the parts of research I found, a ServiceNow report, they talked about the evolution of the contact center over the next couple of years. And one of the big call outs was around removing silos, that silos is a real issue.
Right.
So by the sounds of things, that's exactly what you're doing. You're removing those silos by identifying where the issue is and being able to collaborate and talk. Am I?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of Operata's core tenets is all around our ability to integrate and stream events in real time to downstream systems of record.
Yeah, wow.
And so you've got the initial use cases, which is all around the IT teams getting the alerts, the business teams getting alerts of things that are relevant to them. And each team can have their own alerts set up. That's all well and good. But we're also aware we'd love to be the only platform they use, but we're also aware that there's plenty of other tool sets that go into making up that contact center, right? So you've got your WEM, your WFM platforms, your forecasting, all of those other tool sets. You've also got other observability tools in your environment that your tech teams might use. And so Operata does leverage real-time event streaming into downstream systems of record to be able to provide insights into those to help the teams use the tools that they're used to every day to get to the bottom of these issues quicker and to improve these experiences as fast as they can.
Okay, so now we're elevating above the contact center at this point. We're starting to, obviously, contact center forms part of CX, but it's not all of CX.
Right.
So let's lift that up. How does CX observability contribute to CX differentiation, particularly like in such a competitive market now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. This comes down to brands that care about their customers and truly deeply care about each and every experience that they have with their brand, and understanding, to your point, that the telephony component or the contact center component is only one part of it. It's a very important part of the delivery, the modality of that customer experience. And so the more we can learn about that customer experience, the more that we can set to improve it and really raise the bar. Now, if one brand cares a lot about their customer experience and the next one doesn't, I think we'll certainly see who the winner is going to be pretty quickly, as people vote with their feet, right? if you're contacting your provider, let's say a retail energy provider, and your call drops out twice in a row, and you call back for the third time, you don't want to be calling them to start with. Nobody wants to call a call center, let's be honest. And so when you do, typically something's wrong. We want every post to be a winning post, right? And the brands who care about that are the ones that will thrive. Otherwise, customers are, and the surveys are showing, the data is showing that people will very quickly walk away and go to the next brand. And so this is going to become more and more important. Even when you start to look at things like AI augmentation, it's going to become even more important that those controls are in place and that people truly understand what goes into making the best possible customer and agent experience.
Absolutely. You just touched on something really interesting around augmentation. So everyone's talking about AI. AI is going to take all these jobs. I still don't think that's the case. I think that they will take some jobs because some tasks can be done.
Yeah.
And if we build jobs around tasks, then they'll go. However, I think that CX, as you said, will be a differentiator. I think that when someone does call a contact center, it's going to be one of those white glove services. So how do you think CX observability feeds into that really, like, contextually when we start thinking about AI?
Yeah, I think it really will start to come down to hyper personalization, and brands care a lot about that. Typically, though, it comes from clickstream data. And so people care about where you've been last, where were you on the website, what were you interacting with, what was your last experience with perhaps paying a bill, whatever it might have been, your previous CSAT or NPS scores, that sort of thing. That all makes a difference, but so does some of the more nuts and bolts, I'm going to say unsexy things about your prior interaction that we can then learn to apply on your next to hyper-personalize. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say English is not your first language and you're presented with an IVR or a speech bot which can't understand you, perhaps your accent. You get frustrated.
I'm Aussie and I can't get through it.
100%. It happens to all of us. And so if your frustration is being played out time and time again, shouldn't we learn about you? Shouldn't we learn about you from a profile perspective and understand that, okay, the last 3 times that Luke's called into this contact center, he's had a negative experience with the IVR. Perhaps we should pass him through to a human agent quicker, or bypass certain steps in the IVR, or offer him a second language, or at least annotate what the language is spoken so that we can then reflect that in the bot for the experience next time. This is hyper personalization at the most, I guess, the smallest layer that makes the biggest difference to people's day. Imagine, Luke, ringing into a contact center, being cut off because you're driving in the car, you're going up to your bush block and you cut out. It's not your fault, right? The mobile network cut out. But does that mean that you have to ring back, go through the IVR prompts, wait in queue all over again? Well, what if a brand recognized that when you call back, you'd already just called only moments ago, that you hadn't been fulfilled, and that they can put you to the top of the queue and route you through to the agent with some context that Luke called 10 minutes earlier and his call cut out. Now, that would provide an absolute differentiation to the other brands that you interact with day to day. Couldn't care less whether your call cut out, in some case, dump your call.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you can see all of that, where the call was cut, who cut it, all that sort of jazz.
That's right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep.
Amazing. What you're talking about goes beyond just solving problems. You're getting to symptoms. You're talking about root causes.
That's
and
right.
being able to see that. That's really interesting. Okay. So we're talking about a lot of data here. And you've said real time for this. How real time is real time with some of this data?
In some of the cases, we're talking about hundreds of milliseconds between recognizing the event and that insight and then producing an event off the back of that we could then enact on. And so if you take, say, the Amazon Connect service, you can look at something like contact lens. The events that are generated off that can happen in milliseconds, and we can receive those on an event bus, again, within 10s or 20 milliseconds. So you can act very quickly. So real time means exactly that in our case.
Okay, so let's dive into future trends then.
Sure.
So customer expectations, your customers in general, they're always evolving. They're constantly moving forward. How does Operata adapt both from your own customers, and how does it help your customers adapt?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question. Personally, I hate dashboards. I hate them. You've got to log on. You've got to have an intention. You've got to learn how to read them. It's typically somebody else's view of your data.
Of course.
And then you can hyper-personalize those dashboards as well. But ultimately, it's retrospective.
Yes.
And so I'd like to think that a North Star for Operata is to have customers not logging into dashboards. I would like to see more direct insights in the tools that they use every single day to help them to do their job. And so I think that that's certainly from my view, looking at customers and taking customer feedback, that's exactly what they're looking for as well. They're wanting insights, not reports, not dashboards. And those insights need to be actionable, right? And so I know it's kind of a buzzword, actionable insights, but in the case of CX, that needs to be immediate. You can't retrospectively resolve a poor experience. You can try, absolutely, and there's no harm in that. But the best time to fix poor CX is when it's happening, right? And so that relies on us getting better at the real-time modality, more events, more insights, more meaningful insights, more personalized insights that are available in more platforms. So I think that is where the future lies for observability in CX and how that will align to customer expectations, where that data needs to be accessible, not in a moat. It needs to be in the customer's environment, ready for them to utilize in their other platforms and services.
Amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just data analytics there.
Sure.
And voice quality. Are there any emerging trends there that you're excited about? Because it sounds like you're touching on a few of those pieces.
I guess there's some scuttlebutt out there, and I would hazard to say that it's probably inaccurate that voice interactions are on a decline.
Yeah, right.
And it's actually the opposite. You know, that there is more interactions with technology now, whether that be human, AI, augmented, machine learning, whatever modality, there is more voice interaction. Think about how many times you speak to Siri or Google Home or Alexa. That's an example of a voice interaction, and it's not your typical telephony interaction. But those tools, and as you can probably hear yourself over the last 2 and 3 years, have got better and better and better. From not understanding a word you said to now being able to understand you with full background noise, even at halfway across the other side of the room. They'll be able to understand the commands and then execute off the back of those. And so I think the voice modality has got a lot of room for improvement and still is ahead of us. I don't think that the chat modality is taking over the world. In fact, as you're talking about those white glove interactions, can you imagine having those over chat, or is they going to be more of your sort of day-to-day interactions? And so I think in terms of voice quality and emerging trends, of course, for these bots to operate properly and at their prime, you need to be able to maintain the best possible audio quality for both the understanding and then the feedback to the customer. So it's going to be as important as it is today. We're just switching it up from the telephony network over to an IP network. But ultimately, from a human interaction perspective, nothing changes there. You still need to be heard and you need to be understood. And these things are incredibly important for an overall experience. That's the core of it, right?
Exactly. It's so true. It's something I was reading about recently, is that when your audio quality is actually really poor, you are seen as less trustworthy.
Right.
So I was like amazed by that. So ANU, USC, they both did studies on this, and they found that if the audio quality was poor, what you were saying was reduced significantly, like 30, 40% reduced in trust.
Wow. Those sort of things are exactly what we can measure with tools like Operata and CX Observability. Let's take a use case of a customer who's implemented a noise removal technology, something like Crisp AI. Terrific technology, absolutely fantastic company. You can actually actively measure the NPS or CSAT of agents who have that switched on versus switched off. And the proof is in the pudding there. So you would be able to actively see in our platform which agents have it enabled and not enabled, and also what those scores would be if we were getting feedback from another platform.
Wow.
Then you can actually see what difference that technology makes or not. But I think you'll find that that's absolutely true, is that people are striving for the cleanest, crispest audio without the background noise. You don't want to hear the chickens and the dogs. Maybe not when you're doing a mortgage settlement or something like that.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, you're right. It does build that trust. So it's another place that observability can show you the impact of that customer experience from either an NPS or a CSAT or whatever measurement you choose. And you can experiment with those technologies and get them right.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's one of those things we talk about in CX, this idea of removing friction. And I think what you're creating here is a friction-scape, so that you can see where all of those friction points are, identify those and start removing them, in some cases real time.
Right.
So that they never actually cause an issue to start with. That's pretty amazing. And this is what got me excited about observability, when I've seen it particularly in the IT scape, but then to see that starting to permeate into CX, I think you're on a winner. I think you are really leading in this space. So, and I'm so excited that you're here in Melbourne. That's the other thing. It's been really great to get to know you, John. Now, we were chatting just before this. You're actually heading over to like one of the best events globally.
Indeed.
AWS reInvent.
Yep.
That is just around the corner.
Yep.
I'm really curious. What are you hoping to get out of AWS reInvent?
Every year, it's certainly one of our favorite events. We both connect with our partner, AWS, who we've built a great partnership over the last 6 years with since the ecosystem was launched, really, since Amazon Connect. So it's great to reconnect with those people in person and also on the customer track as well. So we meet a lot of great customers. So either customers we haven't been able to meet before or new customers are coming on board to the platform, hearing about their challenges and how we can solve them in person. Nothing like it. Also, if you've never been to a reInvent, you need to get yourself over there and experience it. The scale of the thing is enormous and it's a beast into itself, and wouldn't miss it for the world.
What are you most looking forward to? Is there any keynote that you really want to get a hold of?
Yeah, the keynote from the CEO is always really, really interesting. I'm certainly interested to hear more around AI control mechanisms and how organizations are going to be putting control planes in place to protect their IP and to protect their brand from wayward interactions. All right. So I'm particularly interested to hear about those kind of control mechanisms for AI that are starting to be released to aid adoption. I still think there's a way to go for AI adoption, of course. And so interested to see how AWS is solving that challenge. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give you one chance to do a 20-second rant. I love things in 20-second blocks. So if you had to rant about anything right now, what would it be? You got 20 seconds.
Okay, read the manual, right? Like I know that it's boring. I know that it's not that cool, but with these new technologies, with CCAS, read the manual, understand what firewall ports you have to open. It is a lot of the problems that we see out there. Not trying to do ourselves out of a job, but open those firewall ports, get the right ports done at the right time. I know it's not cool. I know it's really unsexy, but it gets more people than you could ever imagine. So read the manual.
Love it.
Yeah.
Heard it here. Okay. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insight with me, with everyone who's listening. I think there's a lot of value. I genuinely think that CX observability is going to be something that in 2025, like I predict that CX observability is going to be a big thing. And so watch this space. I think you are on the absolute leading front end of that. So I really hope to see more of you, meet more of the team and just see what you're doing. Yeah. So
anytime.
And good luck at reInvent.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
John, he is the CTO of Operata, and that's it. Until next time, and as always, hooroo.